is V, the Crusadé, delivering the message and objectively commenting, speaking out information, and analyzing nationalism objectively. Let's dive right in to one of the most heated things of all time. Yes, you guessed it, the three big bang words. Can you feel it? Do you know it? Do you know what I'm talking about? Well, if you're not, I'm just going to say it out loud right here. So, today's little caveat are the three words that have seemed to dominate our modern society, which I, for one, know that this is a form of weaponization used by politicians. You ready? Here we go. Racism, fascism, and anti-Semitism. Let's tackle these three individually, bits by pieces, okay? So, when people say or claim that someone is a racist, they're basically saying and claiming and accusing that this person is adding, or I should say tagging, these inherent attributes, these behaviors to someone, basically universal behaviors, if you will, to someone because of this particular person's appearance, phenotype, what have you, and of course race. But the problem with that is that it's really not racist, okay? So, for instance, if you act and do things a certain way, if the way you present yourself is somewhat attributable to violence, then I'm not going to be like, well, maybe he's not violent, maybe she's not going to do any harm. Like, I'm not going to twiddle my thumbs and fingers and just be like, take the risk and put my life in danger to find out. I'm not going to FAFO or anything like that, no. So, the thing about it is the presentation of a person, like say, this person's like all jagged, this person's kind of looking for loose change, or this person's kind of like walking a certain way that seems very abysmal and is, not really fully clothed. Like, these things are signs that show, okay, this person could potentially be harmful. This person may want to do something to me that I'm not going to want. So, when people make a claim about, oh, you're a fascist for saying this, you're a fascist for that, or this person, they call it cause because he's a fascist or she's a fascist, it's just a way for people to kind of use that as an excuse for their behavior, and also essentially, obstruct and manipulate the media and the political sphere of the government. So essentially, like for instance, with the current case of Carmelo Anthony, like he used the GoFundMe page, which generated $750,000, if not more. But in those rounds, and what did they do with the money? They kind of used that money to buy this, buy that, buy whatever luxurious items they may have. I haven't really gotten to the full details of the exact expenditure of their GoFundMe, money, but things like that. Racism. The word racist can already use to help people capitalize on the situation. So it's almost like taking advantage of an opportunity over someone else, and also just using it as a form of top tier. So instead of being just, people are using that word to kind of get away with a lot of horrible things that they themselves have done, and use that as a way to navigate the media to become the beneficiary of the issue when they themselves are the ones who caused the problem. And secondly, of course, when people say the word, like I already mentioned, it's not necessarily because, okay, he's, specifically this, black or Latino or Muslim, Indian, whatever. It's not necessarily about that all the time. That has to do with more so the capability, or I should say the capacity of how these certain kinds of people will act a certain way or have a certain cultural attitude. But it's not necessarily more so that, and it's more about the presentation of that. So yes, there are chances, like from a historical evolutionary perspective, that people from a certain groups of people have kind of acted a certain way to ensure survival. So let's say the sub-Saharan Africans, like they've kind of, they're in tribes, they're bringing spears, they kind of act in a certain way that is spear-like, and they've really not developed themselves beyond just that point in life. And that's kind of part of what they pass along to the children, and then every people who come from that particular set of people are kind of grown and expanded upon that particular way of life. And that in of itself can contribute, say, the capacity and certain likelihood this person will act the way that they've been brought into the world. But at the same time, also, it's just really, how the person presents. Like I said, what is the person doing? Is the person kind of like swinging back and forth? Is the person kind of, acting a little iffy here and there? So those are things that we need to consider, because when, people kind of try to stay away from some others, there are certain valid reasons for that. And it's really not about racist or anything like that. It's really just more so about the overall presentation of the person. If part of a person feels and knows by heart in their blood that there is something wrong about this other person, and this feeling, this aura, this attitude that this person is giving off, then of course that in itself is not racism. It's just a sign of pattern recognition. It's being able to recognize that there's something that isn't quite right, that seems to show a red flag about this person, and not so much, okay, person is in this box, therefore he's this, or this person is in this box, and that box, and whatever. It's not like that, okay? And then the second thing is that word fascism. So, like I already mentioned in my previous topics about that word and the historical lenses of how the West has kind of taken their chainsaws on that word and perverted it in such a sense that have annihilated the consciousness of our modern society. That word is just, it's kind of irrelevant at this point, just as irrelevant as racism, because essentially what it is when people are claiming, like, oh, you're a fascist or whatever, like when they say that, they really don't mean that way, okay? Essentially, the people who claim that you're fascist, most of the time they themselves are the fascists, but it really doesn't matter, because what it is people have this anti-nationalist attitude towards their nation. It's just really bad, and they use World War II, the Holocaust, as an excuse, as a form of psyop to kind of tackle people and use that word, so that they know every time when they accuse someone for being a fascist, they feel like they succeed. But we don't give them that kind of opportunity. The problem is people have weakened themselves and cowed themselves to let others to use such a word to condemn and nullify their own sense of nationalism, and that is just wrong. And I will speak from heart and speak from truth, and only just specifically the truth, nothing else, no bias, no opinion. But fascism is a word that is derived from fascista, which is basically the word of just this unity of people from top to bottom, this authoritarian type of sense of unity, with a homogenous group of people. It's basically essentially hierarchy, kind of. It's basically just how nations have operated, how people have existed over time. This is just the natural way of order of how people have always been. We always have the mother, we always have the father, we always have the children, the heirs, we have the units of families together coming into what we form as a community, and then a community forms power of some kind, people with the military and the people who are governing the families, and then you have the top leader who's overseeing. So I could go on, but that is basically nationalism, and in a sense where you have that group of same homogenous group of people, let alone ethnic, if you will. But to specifically talk about the government itself, it's basically just a top order of governance from like the highest ranking all the way to like the bottom class, which allows autonomy and allows the survival of the whole nation, the whole group of people themselves. So to really say that someone is fascist, it's really not what it is. In essentially, people are just kind of tagging you to a certain event that had happened about this past century ago, So it's really not, it's a really shallow attempt to tackle that. And I feel like this is just getting chaotic because why isn't that people haven't really used that word in the context of, say, Napoleon? Because Napoleon pretty much practically did the same thing, more or less, of what Hitler did. And maybe not necessarily through the same means, or the same exact methodology, if you will, but, certainly every single empire, every single conqueror, and every single king, monarch, ruler, president, whatever, all those people have done pretty much more or less the same thing that every single person has done. And yeah, it certainly doesn't justify what they're doing per se. That's a wholly different animal right there. But my whole point is, just using that word is so anti-national. It's very anti-human. It's very shallow and not very. It's very callous and it's very what you call it. It's just idiotic. Okay, it's not smart. It's not intellectual. It's anti-intellectual. It doesn't resonate with sound logic or reasoning. It's more invoked by the presence of our modern day emotions that are strung by the education system, presented and thrown by the politicians. Last word I want to dive into is anti-Semitism. So, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Same thing. I pretty much that is very similar to the previous word fascism, and basically people use that to take advantage of others to kind of let them feel as if they're not supporting a group of people who has been oppressed. First of all, they're not the only ones who have been oppressed. Every single person on this planet, every country, every nation, every group of tribe and ton of people, every single person has, in some shape or form, been harassed, abused, neglected, and of course, tortured, raped, or deleted by other groups of people. So don't get me started with that, because every single person every group of people, if you will, historically has kind of gone through these loops where one group attacks another group, and another group attacks another group, and one person rises to power, and then another group of people rises to power, and then it just comes like a cycle. So every single person has done that, has gone through the motions, and those people, the Israelites, they're not the only ones. And so that's the point I want to make, is when people start pointing those fingers out, you tell them, if you point one finger out, there's one finger pointing this way, there's a thumb pointing this way, but how many fingers are pointing back? There are 3 fingers pointing back at you. So every time any person who wants to point a finger out to you, you tell them, you have 3 fingers pointing back. Yeah. 3 fingers pointing back. And I'll tell you what those 3 fingers are. I already did this in all my videos. It's nature wins, truth prevails, and justice serves.